module on special education discipline. And for people that work in schools, discipline of special needs students is a totally separate area of discipline relative to discipline of regular education students. All right, and there's a lot of nuances in this space, but I want to hit some of the big pieces that you should be thinking about when discipline is happening for students with special needs. All right, first up, I want to talk about the way that we sort of determine whether or not discipline is at issue here. And so when we worry about a child with discipline issues in a school, what gets conducted is a functional behavioral assessment, all right? So an FBA that gets called sometimes. It's initiated by the ARC, the team that works together to set the student's IEP in place. They may determine that what might be really underlying some of the challenges that this student is having is some behavioral challenges, and so a behavioral assessment is the tool that gets used to determine whether or not there is a behavioral disability. Okay, super. So if a behavioral disability is determined on the part of a student, or behavior is a challenge for this particular kid, we will put in place a behavior intervention plan. All right, and so again, this is a super highly customized document to each kid, again, written by the ARC as the sort of generating body here, that not only puts in place sort of the curricular plan for the kid, which is the IEP, but also puts in place a very specific behavioral plan for the kid, which is what this document is, okay? So it must have some goals in it, some behavioral goals, so the kid not only needs to show progress on content goals, but also needs to show progress on behavioral goals. All right, super. So now, a kid with a behavioral disability, behavior is a challenge, a kid with an IEP generally, something happens to that IEP, a behavioral disability happens, a behavior incident happens, something happens to that child. Now we're going to go into due process proceedings probably, and we're going to consider what to do with that kid. But in the meantime, the law sort of requires that kid to stay put, all right? Now, it's called the stay put provision inside the law, and what it means is that you cannot make a unilateral change in placement. You can't just change the direction of what's going on with this kid's IEP or behavioral plan unilaterally, and the kid needs to stay put until those decisions can be made, all right? So if the discipline at issue is not super serious, which you'll see in the next couple of slides, then the student with an IEP, as we determine how to deal with this student's behavioral challenges, they need to stay in their current placement as long as that current placement is not a massive problem. All right, so that stay put provision is critical, and it's something that we don't do for regular education, non-IEP students. We can go ahead and make changes in what's going on with them. We can put them in a different class or something like that very quickly. Not with students with special needs. They need to stay put until the ARC determines the next step. Okay, super. The one big caveat to that here is weapons and drugs. All right, and there's a little graphic here that sort of shows what's going on. And when it comes to students with disabilities that do bring weapons or drugs into the school environment, there is a 45-day interim alternative educational placement that you can do. So that might be in an alternative school. It might be homeschooling with services being provided. I don't know. That is a choice that can be made by school officials. But you can only make that choice for 45 days because, remember, due process is supposed to run its course in 45 days. And so we should know what the plan is for that child within the 45 days. But if it's a weapons and drugs issue, you can remove the child from the educational setting for that period. Okay? Now, what happens when we have something super serious that happens, like weapons or drugs, or other very serious issues where we might want to consider expelling a student or a longer term suspension for a student? Then there's a whole separate area of law that kicks in for students with special needs called a manifestation determination, where we really need to determine whether or not the behavior that is at issue here, the problematic behavior, is a manifestation of that child's disability. If it is a manifestation of the child's disability, then you may not expel the student for that behavior. Okay, let that sink in. If the behavior is a manifestation of the disability, then you may not expel that student for that behavior. To determine whether or not it is a manifestation, that is where this extra step comes in, the manifestation determination hearing that has to happen, but with the ARC, that we have to make a determination from that team whether or not we are going to label this a manifestation. If it is a manifestation, then regular special education discipline applies and you cannot suspend over 10 days. If it is a manifestation, then you only have 10 days. If it is not a manifestation, then we can expel in the regular way. All right. So when it comes to that student's presence in the building, this is a super important hearing. Those are some of the big pieces of special education discipline. You hopefully get a sense that there's some different things going on here that don't happen inside regular education discipline. All right, so when kids with special needs are potentially going to be disciplined, you need to make sure you're getting the necessary help and you follow all the necessary procedures to make sure that child is protected. Thanks for watching.